The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Council stretched endlessly above Ambassador Marcus Reed's head. Each wall pulsed with bioluminescent patterns from 1,000 alien civilizations. The patterns meant power. They meant authority. They meant that every species standing in this chamber had either submitted to the Council's will or been destroyed for refusing. Reed stood perfectly still in the center of the judgment platform. His hands remained clasped behind his back as 17 of the galaxy's most powerful beings deliberated humanity's fate. The air hummed with charged particles that danced in the low-gravity environment. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. It was working on everyone except Reed. "The evidence cannot be disputed," declared Counselor Vorthak. His serpentine form coiled around a floating platform of living metal. "The humans have violated the Galactic Preservation Accords 14 times. They wage war among themselves. They strip mine their own planet. Now they dare to expand beyond their solar system without our permission." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled aliens. Reed noticed how they kept their distance from him, as if humanity's alleged barbarism might spread like a disease. Only one figure remained silent, an ancient being known as the Curator. His species had been old when the galaxy was young. Furthermore, Vorthak continued, his voice carrying the authority of the hegemony's military might, "Our monitoring stations have detected weapon signatures from their homeworld that exceed Class 7 destructive capacity. No species achieves such power without first proving their peaceful intentions to this council." Reed finally spoke. His voice cut through the chamber's acoustic dampeners with surprising clarity. "Counselor Vorthak, with respect, you have made several assumptions about my species. I believe this council would benefit from reconsidering those assumptions." The chamber fell completely silent. In 3,000 years of recorded council history, no species under judgment had ever interrupted a senior counselor's testimony. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Vorthak's 6 eyes focused on the human with predatory intensity. "You dare to interrupt this proceeding? I dare to save this council from making a decision that could reshape the balance of power in this galaxy forever," Reed said calmly. "You see, there is something about humanity that your surveillance networks have not detected. Something that makes your weapons readings incomplete." The Curator leaned forward for the first time during the session. Ancient interest flickered in its multifaceted gaze. "Explain yourself, human." Reed's smile seemed both diplomatic and threatening. "We have been monitoring your monitoring, Counselor, for the past 57 years. Every deep space probe you sent toward Earth, every stealth reconnaissance ship, every quantum communication you directed at our solar system. We know about the invasion fleet assembled at the edge of our space. We know about the cleansing protocols you have prepared for our homeworld." Shocked silence filled the chamber. Several counselors exchanged glances that spoke of classified information, somehow being compromised, security protocols that should have been unbreachable. "Impossible," whispered Counselor Thane. Her crystalline form shimmered with distress patterns. "Our surveillance technology is centuries ahead of your development curve." "That is exactly what we wanted you to think," Reed replied. "You see, those weapons signatures you detected were not our most advanced technology. They were decoys, carefully crafted to appear exactly as powerful as we wanted you to believe, dangerous enough to take seriously, primitive enough to feel confident about conquering." The implications began to sink in. If humanity had been feeding false information to the galaxy's most advanced surveillance networks for over 50 years, what else were they capable of? The Curator spoke slowly. Each word carried terrible weight. "What is humanity's actual military capacity?" Reed's smile widened. For the first time since entering the chamber, he took a step forward. Every alien in the room unconsciously moved back. "That, honored counselor, is what you're about to discover, because you see, your invasion fleet is not at the edge of our solar system anymore." High above the chamber, emergency lights began flashing, patterns that had not been seen in millennia. Signals indicating an impossible breach of the Council's most secure space. "It is here," Reed said softly, "and so are we." The chamber's walls suddenly became transparent. They revealed the vast space beyond the station. Sleek, dark shapes of human warships hung in perfect formation around the Council's supposedly impregnable headquarters. Ships that had appeared without triggering a single alarm, without disturbing a single sensor. The aliens stared in growing horror at the vessels surrounding them. ships that seemed to exist in ways that defied their understanding of physics and space travel. Reed spoke one final time before the lights went out. Now shall we discuss the terms of humanity's membership in this council? When emergency power restored minimal lighting to the chamber, everything had changed. The council's protocols had sealed every exit. But somehow 3 additional humans now stood beside Ambassador Reed, figures who had materialized as silently as ghosts despite the station's impenetrable security systems. "Allow me to introduce my colleagues," Reed said as if nothing unusual had occurred. Dr. Elena Vasquez, our xenobiology specialist, Commander Jake Morrison, Tactical Operations, and Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who I believe you will find particularly interesting, Counselor Vorthak. The Serpentine counselor recoiled as his eyes fell upon Dr. Tanaka. "This is impossible. She is Zarathi. I can sense the pheromone markers, the neural patterns, but the Zarathi were rendered extinct 200 years ago. We confirmed it ourselves." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward. Her appearance flickered slightly as advanced systems adjusted to the chamber's exotic lighting. When the distortion cleared, her true form was revealed. Distinctly human, but with modifications that suggested extensive adaptation. "Not extinct, counselor," she said in perfect Zarathi dialect. The words caused several aliens to stumble backward in shock. Relocated, hidden, protected by humanity. The chamber erupted in chaos as the full implications of what they were seeing began to register. Everything they thought they knew about the galaxy, about extinct species, about humanity's place in the cosmic order, was crumbling around them, and in the center of it all, Ambassador Reed stood perfectly calm, waiting for the next phase of humanity's carefully orchestrated revelation to begin. The curator's ancient voice carried a tremor that had not been heard in eons. "How many species have you hidden from us?" Dr. Tanaka consulted a device that clearly was not of human origin. 47 species that your records classify as extinct, all very much alive under human protection." The number hit the council chamber like a physical blow. 47 species represented billions of sentient beings, countless irreplaceable cultures, technologies and philosophies that could reshape galactic civilization. "Impossible," Counselor Vorthak insisted. His serpentine form writhed with fury. "Our military campaigns were precise and thorough. We confirmed each extinction personally." "You confirmed the destruction of their homeworlds," Commander Morrison corrected. "But you never asked the right question. Where did the populations go? That is the thing about humans. We are excellent at logistics." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward and activated a holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber. The image showed something that challenged everything the council thought they knew about their galaxy. Where their official charts showed empty space and quarantine zones, this human map pulsed with hidden networks of light. "This is what the galaxy actually looks like," she announced. 47 sanctuary systems, 1,200 hidden habitats, 3 million refugee ships operating under quantum stealth protocols, approximately 15 billion sentient beings that your records classify as extinct. The display zoomed in on one particular system. What appeared to be empty space revealed itself as a thriving civilization when viewed through human sensors. Cities floated in perfect harmony around artificial stars. Beings from dozens of different species walked together through carefully maintained atmospheric zones. New Terra Sanctuary, Dr. Vasquez explained, established 43 years ago. Population 2.7 million beings from 31 different species. Every major decision is made by consensus. Every resource allocation is determined by need rather than military value. Counselor Thane's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. No civilian population could coordinate such complex operations across interstellar distances. "You are thinking about this wrong," Reed said gently. "These were not military operations. They were humanitarian ones. Every human ship involved was crewed by volunteers. Scientists, engineers, teachers, artists, people who believed that genocide was wrong regardless of political justifications. The implications were staggering. If humanity could conceal entire civilizations from the galaxy's most advanced surveillance technology, what else were they capable of? How long had they been watching? How much did they really know?" Commander Morrison activated another control interface. "When the Zarathi told us about your cleansing protocols 57 years ago, we realized we had a choice. Stand by and watch genocide happen or do something about it, The hologram shifted to show historical footage that should not have existed. Human ships loading desperate families onto massive arc vessels as hegemony fleets approached distant worlds. The coordination was flawless. The timing was perfect. The execution showed a level of planning that spoke of deep understanding of hegemony tactics. We had 147 hours to evacuate 98,000 Zerathi from 17 different population centers. Morrison continued. We managed it with 11 minutes to spare. Dr. Tanaka smiled slightly. Most chose to live when given the option. And in exchange for sanctuary, they shared their knowledge, their culture, their perspectives. They helped us understand not just your technology, but your methods, your weaknesses, your fears. The chamber filled with uncomfortable silence as the full scope of humanity's deception became clear. They were not the primitive, warlike species the Council had assumed. They were something far more dangerous. A civilization that had been quietly building a shadow empire based on principles the hegemony had long forgotten. Compassion, protection, unity. The invasion force you sent to our solar system, Commander Morrison said casually. We did not destroy it. We absorbed it. Every ship, every crew member. They are all fine, by the way, receiving medical attention and a very enlightening orientation about the actual state of galactic affairs. Vorthak's eyes widened in horror. My fleet would never surrender to primitives. Commander Scythen sends his regards. Dr. Tanaka interrupted gently. He is quite impressed with our educational facilities. He has requested a transfer to study comparative military ethics with the Mordak philosophers. The revelation shattered what remained of the Council's composure. If humanity could not only defeat hegemony forces but convert them, if they had built an alliance of supposedly extinct species, if they possessed technology that made the Council's most advanced systems look primitive, then everything had changed. The balance of power in the galaxy had not just shifted, it had been completely inverted. Show them our true capabilities, Reed said quietly. Dr. Vasquez gestured, and the chamber's walls became fully transparent. Beyond the ring of human warships, space itself seemed to fold and twist. More ships materialized from what appeared to be empty vacuum. Not dozens but thousands, vessels of designs that incorporated technologies from 47 different civilizations. 47 different approaches to science and technology, Dr. Vasquez explained, all combined, refined, and improved by a species that specializes in adaptation and cooperation. Zerathi biotechnology integrated with human engineering. Cathani information networks enhanced by our quantum computing. Mordak philosophical frameworks applied to military strategy. The ships were not just surrounding the Council station. They were existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, present in normal space but also folded through realities that the Council's science could barely comprehend. When you exist in 7 dimensions at once, Commander Morrison noted, hiding from 3-dimensional sensors becomes rather trivial. Councillor Vorthak's form had begun to tremble. Whether from fear or rage, it was impossible to tell. This is madness. You are describing impossible science. We are describing what happens when 47 different species pool their knowledge with one goal in mind, Reed corrected. Protecting life rather than destroying it. It turns out the universe has been waiting a very long time for someone to try that approach on a galactic scale. The curator spoke with the weight of eons behind its words. What do you want from us? Reed's diplomatic mask slipped for the first time. What lay beneath was not the face of a negotiator, but of someone who had seen too much suffering and decided to end it. What we have always wanted, Counselor. An end to the genocide. An end to the cleansing protocols. An end to the systematic extinction of any species that does not conform to hegemony standards. And if we refuse? Thane asked, though her flickering suggested she already knew the answer. Dr. Vasquez answered with devastating gentleness. Then you will discover what 15 billion grateful refugees are capable of when they decide they are tired of hiding. You see, we did not just save these species. We gave them hope, purpose, the chance to rebuild their civilizations under protection. And they have had decades to prepare, she added, softly. The threat was delivered so kindly that it took several seconds for the full implications to register. When they did, even the ancient curator seemed to shrink. But we are hoping it will not come to that, Reed added. Because despite everything you have done, we still believe in the possibility of redemption. We still think this council can become something worth preserving, starting right now. The massive holographic display that materialized in the center of the judgment chamber showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Where their official charts showed empty space, dead systems, and quarantine zones, this human map revealed hidden networks of light connecting thousands of thriving communities. Before we discuss terms, Reed announced, "I think it is important that you understand the full scope of what you are dealing with. Dr. Martinez, would you please bring our guests up to speed on Project Lighthouse?" A new human stepped forward. Dr. Maria Martinez seemed to shift subtly as she moved, as if she existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The very air around her appeared to bend and flow in impossible ways. Project Lighthouse began 39 years ago, she explained, when the Cathani archive keepers shared their theoretical work on dimensional folding with our quantum physicists. The holographic display showed mathematical equations that made the curator's ancient mind reel with their implications. Formulas that described reality not as a single plane of existence, but as infinite layers of interconnected space and time. "Impossible," the curator whispered. "Dimensional manipulation requires energy outputs equivalent to stellar cores. No biological species could harness such power safely." Dr. Martinez smiled with the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to children. "You are absolutely right. That is why we did not try to harness it. We learned to ask it nicely." The chamber fell into stunned silence as the implications began to sink in. The humans had not just mastered advanced technology. They had developed a philosophy of cooperation that extended to the fundamental forces of reality itself. Commander Morrison activated another control interface. The chamber's walls became transparent once again, revealing not just the human fleet surrounding the station, but something far more impossible. The ships were not just in normal space. They existed in what appeared to be folded reality, simultaneously present in multiple dimensions. "When you exist in 7 dimensions at once," Morrison explained casually, "hiding from 3-dimensional sensors becomes rather trivial." "But that is not the interesting part." Dr. Vasquez picked up the explanation. "The interesting part is what we discovered when we started asking the universe to help us protect people instead of destroy them. It turns out reality itself has some very strong opinions about genocide." To demonstrate, she gestured toward the chamber's quantum-stabilized walls, barriers that had been designed to contain the most dangerous energies in known space. At her touch, they simply opened. Not broken, not bypassed, but somehow convinced to step aside. "The Mordak philosophers call it ethical resonance," Dr. Tanaka added. "When your actions align with the fundamental principles of preservation and growth, the universe tends to cooperate. Physical laws become suggestions. Technological limitations become starting points rather than barriers." Counselor Vorthak's serpentine form had begun to tremble violently. "This is madness. You are describing magic, not science. We are describing what happens when 47 different species pool their knowledge with one goal in mind," Reed corrected. "Protecting life rather than destroying it. It turns out the universe has been waiting a very long time for someone to try that approach on a galactic scale." The curator's voice carried genuine fear for the first time in eons. "Show us your true strength." Dr. Martinez nodded and raised her hand. The gesture seemed simple, almost casual, but its effects were anything but ordinary. The massive council station began to glow with soft, warm light that seemed to emanate from within the structure itself. "We are not showing you our strength, honored curator," Martinez said gently. "We are showing you our intent. Every sentient being on this station is now experiencing perfect cellular regeneration. Any illness, any injury, any age-related degradation is healing itself. The effect was immediate and impossible to deny." Counselor Thane's crystalline form, which had been clouded with centuries of accumulated quantum damage, suddenly rang like a perfect bell. Vorthak's serpentine scales, scarred from countless battles, became pristine once more. Even the curator, ancient beyond measure, seemed to straighten as eons of weariness lifted from its multifaceted frame. "This is what we do," Dr. Vasquez said softly. "We do not conquer. We do not destroy. We heal, we protect. We preserve. And yes, when necessary, we defend those who cannot defend themselves. But here is what you need to understand," Commander Morrison added, his tone growing serious. "For 57 years we have been playing defense, hiding refugees, concealing populations, working in secret to preserve what you sought to destroy. That phase is ending. Reed stepped forward. For the first time since entering the chamber, his diplomatic mask slipped entirely. What lay beneath was not the face of a negotiator, but of someone who had witnessed too much suffering and decided to end it. Counselor Vorthak, your hegemony has systematically eliminated 237 species over the past millennium, billions of sentient beings, countless irreplaceable cultures, infinite potential for growth and discovery, all destroyed because they did not conform to your narrow definition of galactic stability. He turned to address the entire council. And you allowed it to happen, sanctioned it, voted to authorize it. You turned genocide into a bureaucratic procedure. The chamber filled with uncomfortable silence as the weight of history pressed down on the assembled aliens. Centuries of decisions that had seemed logical at the time now appeared as monstrous as they truly were. So here is what is going to happen, Reed continued. The Galactic Council is going to be restructured. The Preservation Accords are going to be rewritten. The hegemony's military expansion is going to end, and every species in this galaxy is going to have a voice in their own future. And if we refuse? Vorthak asked, though his voice carried no real conviction. Dr. Martinez answered with devastating gentleness. Then you will discover what happens when 15 billion grateful refugees decide they are done being grateful and start getting creative with seven-dimensional physics and ethical resonance. The threat was delivered so softly, so kindly, that it took several seconds for its full implications to register. When they did, even the ancient curator seemed to shrink in upon itself. But we are hoping it will not come to that, Reed added, his diplomatic smile returning, because despite everything you have done, despite the atrocities you have authorized and the lives you have destroyed, we still believe in the possibility of redemption. We are offering you the same choice we offered every other species, Dr. Vasquez concluded. Evolve or become extinct. The difference is, when humanity enforces extinction, it means your ideas die while you get to live long enough to develop better ones. The holographic display shifted one final time, showing not ships or weapons or demonstrations of impossible power, but something far more threatening to the established order. It showed hope. Billions of beings from dozens of species working together, learning from each other, building something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization based on the radical idea that every life had value. Starting right now, Reed said quietly, as the chamber filled with the soft light of universal healing and the promise of fundamental change. The judgment chamber had transformed into something unprecedented in council history. Where once 17 representatives had deliberated the fate of entire species in isolated splendor, now the space itself seemed to expand beyond physical possibility. Additional viewing platforms materialized from thin air as representatives from the 47 supposedly extinct species began appearing throughout the chamber. Reed stood before what was rapidly becoming the largest assembly in galactic history. Beside him, former Counselor Vorthak prepared to deliver testimony that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. The serpentine being's entire demeanor had changed as the healing energy continued to work through his system, removing not just physical damage but something deeper. The evidence is overwhelming, Vorthak announced, his voice carrying newfound humility instead of its former arrogance. 237 cases of systematic genocide, spanning 1,047 years of galactic history. The documentation, provided through human-facilitated dimensional archaeology, leaves no room for denial. The revelation had shaken the galaxy's scientific community to its core. Humanity's mastery of dimensional folding allowed them to observe and record events from the past with perfect clarity. Every hidden massacre, every covered-up extinction, every carefully falsified report now lay bare before the assembled delegates. Dr. Vasquez manipulated the central holographic display with graceful gestures. However, we have learned that revenge only creates more suffering. Instead, we are implementing galaxy-wide restoration protocols. Every extinct species will be given the opportunity to rebuild their civilization. Every destroyed world will be offered terraforming assistance. The scope of the project was staggering. Using technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics through sheer force of ethical will, humanity and their refugee allies had begun the largest reconstruction effort in galactic history. The Zarathi homeworld, glass for 2 centuries, now blooms with life again, reported Dr. Tanaka, her image transmitted from the restored planet's surface. Through the dimensional viewing system, The assembled delegates could see impossible landscapes. Crystalline forests grew from soil that had been molten rock just months before. Cities rose from blueprints that combined human engineering with Zarathi biotechnology. Commander Morrison, now bearing the title of Galactic Defense Coordinator, added his own report. Former hegemony military units have been integrated into the new Preservation Corps. Their mission is to protect developing civilizations rather than suppress them. Response time to any threat against a sentient species has improved by 4,000%. The transformation was visible throughout the chamber. Where once the Council had been a closed system of established powers making decisions about lesser species, the new assembly operated on principles that humanity had introduced: transparency, inclusion, and what they called ethical consensus. Every decision was made with input from every affected species. Every policy was evaluated not just for its efficiency, but for its moral implications. Every action was measured against a simple question that had revolutionized galactic politics. Does this preserve and protect life, or does it diminish it? The curator, now serving as the Assembly's historical advisor, spoke with wonder about the transformation. In 3 million years of galactic civilization, we had never conceived that governance could be based on compassion rather than control. The humans have shown us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the commitment to preserve. But perhaps the most significant change was not visible in any display or report. It was the atmosphere in the chamber itself. For the first time in millennia, representatives from hundreds of species worked together toward common goals. The careful hierarchies that had defined galactic politics for eons had dissolved into something unprecedented: cooperation. Reed gestured toward the massive star map that now dominated the chamber's central space. The remarkable thing is, we are just getting started. The refugee populations we protected were not just surviving and hiding. They were innovating, creating, developing new approaches to science and philosophy that could only emerge from the intersection of diverse perspectives. The display showed the galaxy as it now existed. Where once there had been empty quarantine zones and dead systems, new civilizations were emerging. Hybrid cultures that combined the best aspects of multiple species, scientific collaborations that were achieving breakthroughs thought impossible just months earlier. The hegemony's greatest fear was that diversity would lead to chaos, Dr. Martinez observed, her form flickering slightly as she spoke from several dimensions at once. What we have discovered is that diversity leads to strength. Every different perspective, every unique approach to problem solving, every cultural innovation makes the whole galaxy more resilient, more creative, more alive. Former Councillor Thane, now serving as the Assembly's Reconciliation Coordinator, added her own perspective. Her crystalline form rang with perfect harmony as she spoke. We spent a millennium trying to impose order through uniformity. The humans taught us that true order comes from harmony, allowing each species to contribute their unique gifts while working toward shared goals. As the Assembly session continued, Reed found himself approached by delegates from dozens of species. Many had never been allowed to speak in the old council chambers. They came with ideas, with innovations, with dreams for a future that none of them could have imagined alone. "There is something I want you to understand," Reed told the gathered delegates. "What we have accomplished here, what we have built together, this is not humanity's gift to the galaxy. This is what becomes possible when everyone gets a voice, when every perspective is valued, when protecting life becomes more important than maintaining power." He gestured toward the vast windows that showed stars stretching to infinity. But now each point of light represented not just a sun, but a potential home for countless forms of life. The quarantine zones were being lifted. The dead systems were being restored. The galaxy itself was healing. "The question before us now," Reed continued, "is not whether we can change the galaxy. We have already done that. The question is whether we can build something worthy of the sacrifices that brought us here, whether we can create a galactic community where every species, every culture, every individual has the right to grow, to thrive, to contribute to something larger than themselves." The chamber fell silent as the weight of possibility settled over the assembled delegates. For the first time in galactic history, every species had a voice, every perspective mattered, every life had value. Dr. Vasquez broke the silence with words that would be remembered for millennia. "The galaxy that declared war on Earth no longer exists. In its place, we have built something new. A galactic community based on the radical idea that diversity is strength, that cooperation is possible, and that every sentient being deserves the chance to reach their full potential. And this, Reed concluded, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber and beyond, to worlds and stations and ships across the galaxy, is just the beginning. The applause that followed was not the polite acknowledgement typical of council sessions. It was something unprecedented in galactic history. The sound of hope-given voice. 6 months after the judgment that had reshaped galactic civilization, the council chambers bore no resemblance to their former imposing grandeur. Where once 17 representatives had deliberated the fate of entire species in isolated splendor, now thousands of delegates from across the galaxy gathered in vast, interconnected spaces that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. The transformation was visible in every detail. The cold crystalline walls had been replaced by living surfaces that grew and adapted to accommodate different atmospheric requirements. Beings who breathed methane worked alongside those who required pure oxygen. Species that communicated through bioluminescent patterns collaborated with those who spoke in harmonic frequencies. Ambassador Reed stood before the largest assembly in galactic history. No longer just representing humanity, he now served as coordinator for the Coalition of Preserved Species. The title felt strange, but it reflected the new reality. 47 formerly extinct civilizations had emerged from hiding to reclaim their place among the stars. Beside him, former Counselor Vorthak prepared to deliver a report that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. The serpentine being had requested to serve as redemption advocate, a position created specifically for those seeking to atone for past actions. The War Crimes Tribunal has completed its initial investigations, Vorthak announced. His voice carried genuine emotion for the first time in centuries. 237 cases of systematic genocide, spanning over a millennium of galactic history. The evidence provided through human-facilitated dimensional archaeology is overwhelming and undeniable. The revelation had sent shockwaves throughout known space. Humanity's mastery of dimensional folding allowed them to observe and record events from the past with perfect clarity. Every hidden massacre, every covered-up extinction, every carefully falsified report now existed as immutable historical record. However, Vorthak continued, the human collective has proposed an alternative to traditional justice. Rather than punishment, they advocate for what they term constructive atonement. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward to explain. We have learned that revenge only creates more suffering. Instead, we are implementing galaxy-wide restoration protocols. Every extinct species will be given the opportunity to rebuild their civilization. Every destroyed world will be offered terraforming assistance. Every cultural legacy that was lost will be recovered through dimensional archaeology and preserved. The scope of the project defied comprehension. Using technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics through sheer force of ethical will, humanity and their refugee allies had begun the largest reconstruction effort in galactic history. The Zarathi homeworld, glass for 2 centuries, now blooms with life again, reported Dr. Tanaka from the restored planet's surface. The dimensional viewing system allowed the assembly to witness impossible transformations. Crystalline forests grew from soil that had been molten rock. Cities rose that combined architectural traditions from dozens of species. Commander Morrison, now bearing the title of Galactic Defense Coordinator, added his own report. Former hegemony military units have been integrated into the new Preservation Corps. Their mission has fundamentally changed from suppression to protection. Response time to any threat against a sentient species has improved by 4,000%. But perhaps the most significant change was visible in the chamber itself. Where once the Council had been a closed system of established powers making decisions about lesser species, the new Galactic Assembly operated on principles that humanity had introduced. Every decision was made with input from every affected species. Every policy was evaluated not just for its efficiency, but for its moral implications. The curator, now serving as the Assembly's historical advisor, spoke with wonder about the transformation. In 3 million years of galactic civilization, we had never conceived that governance could be based on compassion rather than control. The humans have shown us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the commitment to preserve. Reed smiled as he looked out over the assembly. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species, all working together toward common goals. The remarkable thing is that we are just getting started. The refugee populations we protected were not just surviving and hiding. They were innovating, creating, developing new approaches to science and philosophy that could only emerge from the intersection of diverse perspectives. The chamber's walls displayed a star map showing the galaxy as it now existed. Where once there had been empty quarantine zones and dead systems, new civilizations were emerging. Hybrid cultures that combined the best aspects of multiple species, scientific collaborations achieving breakthroughs thought impossible months earlier. The hegemony's greatest fear was that diversity would lead to chaos, Dr. Martinez observed, her form flickering slightly as she spoke from several dimensions at once. What we have discovered is that diversity leads to strength. Every different perspective, every unique approach to problem solving, every cultural innovation makes the whole galaxy more resilient, more creative, more alive. Former Counselor Thane, now serving as the Assembly's reconciliation coordinator, added her perspective. Her crystalline form rang with perfect harmony as she spoke. We spent a millennium trying to impose order through uniformity. The humans taught us that true order comes from harmony, allowing each species to contribute their unique gifts while working toward shared goals. As the assembly session progressed, delegates from dozens of species approached Reed with ideas, innovations, and dreams for a future none of them could have imagined alone. Many represented civilizations that had never been allowed to speak in the old council chambers. There is something I want you to understand, Reed told the gathered delegates. What we have accomplished here, what we have built together, this is not humanity's gift to the galaxy. This is what becomes possible when everyone gets a voice, when every perspective is valued, when protecting life becomes more important than maintaining power. He gestured toward the vast windows showing stars stretching to infinity. Each point of light now represented not just a sun, but a potential home for countless forms of life. The quarantine zones were being lifted. The dead systems were being restored. The galaxy itself was healing. The galaxy that declared war on Earth no longer exists, Reed continued. In its place, we have built something unprecedented. A galactic community where every species, every culture, every individual has the right to grow, to thrive, to contribute to something larger than themselves. Dr. Vasquez added her own thoughts. The most remarkable aspect is not the technology or the military capabilities, or even the successful resurrection of extinct species. It is the simple revolutionary idea that started it all. When faced with genocide, some people choose to save lives rather than preserve systems. And sometimes, she concluded with a smile that encompassed the entire assembly, the universe rewards that choice with the power to change everything. In the months and years that followed, the story of humanity's revelation would become legend. But for those who lived through it, who participated in building the new galactic community, the most significant aspect was not the dramatic confrontation or the technological marvels. It was the quiet revolution that followed. The daily work of building bridges between species that had never communicated. The patient effort of healing wounds that had festered for millennia. The gradual realization that cooperation was not just possible, but inevitable once fear and mistrust were replaced with understanding and hope. The new galaxy was not perfect. Challenges remained, conflicts arose, and solutions required constant negotiation and compromise. But for the first time in galactic history, those challenges were met with the combined wisdom and creativity of every sentient species working together. As Reed often told visitors to the assembly, humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply offered it a choice. And the galaxy, after millennia of accepting that genocide was necessary for order, had chosen to try something different. They had chosen to live.